Amanda had enough. She broke up with Ronnie because he has been cheating again. She has been patient with him because of his trauma caused by his parents leaving him, but his repeated unfaithfulness is unacceptable. She has been played for so long. She must keep a bit of self-worth and dignity. Even though it's extremely difficult to move on, Amanda decided to put an end to her foolishness. She's been crying for an hour, while staring at the photo sent by her best friend, Kathy. Kathy saw Ronnie with her ex at the cafe where he is working. She took a picture of them and sent it to her best friend. Amanda can clearly see that Ronnie is still not over his ex, that's why he has been ignoring her messages and calls. Amanda is slumped on the couch in her apartment, when she heard someone knocking at the door. She suddenly received a message, it's from Ronnie, saying that they need to talk. She replied, telling him to get lost and leave her be. She also said that Kathy saw him with his ex at the cafe. He got confused and denied everything. He wanted to talk to her personally, so he banged on the door forcefully. Amanda got irritated at the noise, so she marched to the door to confront him. She looked through the peephole first but became enraged at the sight. She saw Ronnie with his ex, standing behind him. She immediately opened the door but wondered where his ex went, because she was nowhere to be seen. Ronnie was all alone. She asked him where his ex is, but he said that he's all by himself. Amanda kept insisting that she saw his ex just seconds ago through the peephole. Ronnie became frightened and immediately pushed Amanda inside her apartment, shutting the door behind him. She shouted furiously and pushed him away. He asked her to calm down and sit. He sat in front of her, shivering, holding her shoulders while looking at her in the eyes. He told her that he's been seeing his ex for the past weeks because her parents kept bugging him. His ex suffered from an acute illness, and wanted to clear the air with him before she dies. He said that it was his ex's memorial service earlier. So it's impossible for him to be seen with her at the cafe because she is dead. He went to the service and came to work afterwards. He didn't inform Amanda because he knows that she'll just get jealous, and he was not mistaken. Amanda was at a loss because she clearly saw his ex behind him just a while ago. Then suddenly, chilling air began to blow from nowhere. Amanda screamed as she saw Ronnie's ex instantly appeared behind him, trying to strangle him. She grabbed Ronnie towards her, then the ghost suddenly vanished. She got frightened, but at the same time, she was wondering and clueless why the ghost was resentful towards him. It seems that his ex wanted to kill him. Ronnie thanked her for saving him, and told her that everything's going to be fine now. He gave her the usual coffee he brought for Amanda. He always bring her coffee he personally brewed, just like what he did for his ex before she died, and with all his other exes before they died. Amanda felt cramps on her stomach and began coughing blood. She panicked. She felt something was wrong. Ronnie said that everything's okay and that she should just sleep it off. As she slowly closes her eyes, she can see Ronnie, with a grin, on his face. Billy and Ryan are the resident office bullies of their company. They appear to be harmless and sympathetic when they talk to people, but the moment they turn their backs on them, they begin to badmouth and spread gossip about them. Some people have already addressed this concern to the supervisors. They will stop momentarily, but resume after merely an hour. Both are naturals. It's as if bullying is engraved to their souls. Their influence is spreading, much faster than a wildfire. Most of their colleagues are afraid of them, because they will start badmouthing anyone who go against them. It doesn't matter if you're kind, because they will prey on anyone if they want to. They always have a way of bending the truth. Since both have very loud voices, they feel empowered. John is one of their victims. He is new in the company. Being a novice, he tries to be friendly to everyone, even to Billy and Ryan, whose reputations are still unknown to him. John thought that he was building camaraderie with them. But little did he know that the tandem were just getting information from him, so they can spread rumors about him. They bent the truth and added lies to John's personal accounts. John felt attacked and betrayed, because he didn't expect he'll immediately encounter monsters, during his first week at work. He talked to the supervisor about the unpleasant and unprofessional behavior of the two. Billy and Ryan were called to the Human Resource Department, and was told to stop bullying John. But after their meeting with the HR officer, they badmouthed and gossiped even more. They said that John has no sense of camaraderie and that he is too sensitive. They also said that since he is new, he must conform with their own rules and not with the company's. John felt helpless and hopeless. He wanted to resign, but he needs money to pay his bills. It will also look bad if he just stayed with the company for a couple of weeks. So John just endured the pain. Every day was a torture, as he continues to hear the loud and irritating voices of Billy and Ryan, echoing across the office. One night, John was driving home on a dark and empty road, when he was suddenly cut off by a rampaging car. He honked on it, but the car just drove even faster, as if trying to piss him off. Then he heard a loud crash ahead. He drove towards the crash and stopped. The car that cut him off hit a busted traffic light post, which fell on the roof of the car due to the collision. The bumper, hood and roof of the car were heavily damaged. John stepped out of his car to aid the passengers, but he was surprised and speechless upon seeing them. The passengers were Billy and Ryan. Both were drenched in their own blood. Ryan, who was in the passenger seat, was unconscious, while Billy was wailing in pain. Billy recognized John and asked for his help. John froze for a minute, contemplating on what he'll do. He looked for the traffic enforcement cameras and found them lying on the ground, completely destroyed. He smirked. He lit a cigarette and just stared at them. Then, he hurriedly opened the fuel tank of their car and dropped his cigarette. He swiftly ran to his car, drove off as fast as he could, and stopped at a safe distance. After a few minutes, the car blew up and was consumed by a raging fire. John can hear the cries of pains and screams of regret of both Billy and Ryan. It were music to his ears. He felt exhilarated and rejuvenated. He laughed manically as he watches their bodies turn into crisp. At last, he was free of the monster's grasps. The next day, news about the tragic death of Billy and Ryan spread in the office. Most said that they deserved it, while a few felt sorry for them. Then one of John's colleagues asked him, what his thoughts are about the tragedy. He was silent for a moment, then said that he heard a rumor that Billy and Ryan were heavily intoxicated before the accident. That they were high because of drugs. And that they were being chased by the police because of some illegal activity. The other workers heard everything, and they began gathering in small groups, talking about Billy and Ryan. As for John, he went back to his desk and opened his computer. And for the first time, he was at peace. Olivia is listening intently to every word, uttered by the man in coat in front of a big crowd. She is trying to grasp every detail, and weighing concepts known and new to her. She is being drawn to the man who is exuding with confidence, paired with a roaring and mighty voice, but she is not entirely convinced. Olivia has been invited to a church gathering by one of her co-workers, who is a longtime member. She is not religious and not a fan of churches, because she personally believes that all ceremonies and gatherings are created to entice or influence people in favor of their organizations. She considers them as modern cults, clothed in the promise of salvation. After the church service, she was personally welcomed by Pastor George, who is in his early 30s. He laid out his hand for a handshake, to which Olivia obliged. Pastor George is married to a loving wife, who is 15 years older than him. He has 2 children, ages 6 and 7. He introduced Olivia to his family. She noticed that the wife is somewhat impersonal towards her. She just ignored the gesture, thinking that she is probably tired. After the service, snacks were distributed to the churchgoers. Pastor George personally gave food to Olivia, and never left her side until she finished her snack. Olivia and her friend bid goodbye to the pastor, who walked them to their car. As they were leaving, Olivia saw the pastor and his wife having a quarrel in a hidden corner of the church. A month has passed and Olivia is still going to the church. She and the pastor became close. To avoid any rumors, George made Olivia the finance committee head to handle the church funds. The head stays after the service to count and record the collection every gathering. Olivia just went along with what George wants. After all, he is the pastor and everything he says is true and absolute, at least to the people blinded by him. There were times when Olivia giggled during the sermon, because George talked about integrity and being faithful to the family. But after the gathering, they are always left alone within the confines of the church's walls. The illicit relationship between George and Olivia went on for months, until one day, Olivia broke her troublesome news to the pastor. She is 1 month pregnant. George got furious and told her to abort the baby, to which Olivia violently protested. He said that if anyone finds out, it will be the end of him. After their intense and heated conversation, the pastor completely ignored Olivia during church service. His sermon focused on lies, deceit, and works of the devil. Olivia opened up to her friend who invited her months ago to attend the church, but her friend said that it's impossible, because Pastor George is a righteous man and would never do such a thing. She talked to the other church members, but she was just judged and ridiculed. They said that Pastor George has been their pastor for many years, and he is incapable of doing such acts. They told her to stop going to church because she will just tarnish its good reputation. Olivia never stepped again on the place that brought her shame. One night, Olivia was on her way home, walking. She was crossing the street when all of a sudden, a car appeared from a corner, driving fast towards her. She was shocked and stunned. She tried to evade the car but it was too late. The car hit her hard and she flew to the other side of the road. The car just drove away, leaving her bleeding. There is no license plate attached to the car, but she already knew the owner the moment she saw it approaching her. Concerned citizens called 911, but it was too late. The moment an ambulance arrived, she already lost her life, together with the baby in her womb. The following Sunday, the church offered a service to Olivia, since she was a member of the church. And also, to show the rest of the world that despite the scandal that she brought, the church still forgave her. Pastor George was in the middle of his eulogy when suddenly, they heard a baby crying. He ignored it, but the crying grew louder. He called the attention of anyone who has a baby, but no one has one. Then all the lights went off, except the one directed at the pastor on the stage. The cry became louder and louder. The members screamed as they saw Olivia appear beside George, carrying a crying fetus. Her head is shattered and blood is all over her. Everyone was horrified and began running towards the exit, but the doors are locked. George fell on his knees, trembling in fear. He shouted, "Please forgive me. I made a mistake. I should have taken responsibility. I'm sorry I killed you." Olivia stretched out her hands, giving him the fetus. With quivering hands, George took it. Everyone in the church heard George's confession because his microphone is still on. Everyone gasped in disbelief. Olivia and the fetus disappeared. All the lights turned back on and the doors were unlocked. The members left one by one, as they leave their righteous pastor on the stage, where he truly belongs, alone. Our family needed a much bigger space because my mom is pregnant with my fourth sibling. My dad searched for different listings on the internet and found a house that suits our needs. It has 4 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a wide living room, a roomy nursery room, a high-ceiling basement, and an enormous attic. The front yard has trees and some flowering plants. The backyard is covered in grass and surrounded by old fences. The house seems perfect for our growing family, the only drawback is that it was built in the 1920s. Many people believe that old houses are haunted. I have heard of numerous scary stories from my friends, but I have to experience those myself to accept their claims as true and real. After all, to see is to believe is my motto. One night, I was sitting on my bed as I watched a movie on my laptop. I was so engrossed on the film that I have lost track of time. Then suddenly, I heard someone knocking on the window beside my bed. The knocks were faint, but enough to startle me. I jumped on my seat and almost fell. I hesitantly glanced at the window but no one was there. For a moment, I felt scared. But I just told myself that it's just the wind. I just closed my laptop and went to sleep. I woke up quite early the following day. I was still sleepy and decided to go back to bed. But I went to the bathroom first because nature called, then I returned to my room. I was about to lay down when someone grabbed my right leg from under the bed. I was surprised and immediately screamed at the top of my lungs. I slumped hard on the floor while the hand was still holding me. Then, I heard a deafening laughter. It was my older brother. He was the one who grabbed my leg. I confronted him about the knock on the window last night, to which he admitted. My fright turned into frustration in an instant. To get back at him, I punched him hard on his gut, but he just continued giggling. To my annoyance, I pushed him out of my room, locked the door and went back to sleep. I woke up and it was almost noon. I felt hunger. I went out of my room then straight to the kitchen to fix lunch. As I walked past the living room, I saw the whole family watching with their eyes fixated on the TV screen. I just walked by and ignored them because of my dismay of not calling me to have lunch. I opened the refrigerator to get a glass of water when suddenly, I got a notification on my cell phone. I took my phone out of my pocket and saw one message. I opened it. It was a message from my mom asking me what do I want to eat because the whole family went out for lunch. I got confused, then I got scared. If my family is out there somewhere eating, then who are the people in the living room? Emily is a single mother who works 2 jobs. She is a full-time restaurant server during the day, and a cashier in a 24/7 convenience store in the evening, until the wee hours the following day. The only time that she has with her 5-year-old daughter, is when she goes home to change clothes, and eat a spoonful of dinner in between her jobs. Most of the time, her daughter is at a daycare center or with a nanny. She fears for her safety and her daughter's, because of the series of killings happening lately in their town. But the fear of not providing for her child's needs, is bigger than the fear of a serial killer on the loose. Almost a dozen of dead bodies have been found in different garbage dumpsters for the last 6 months. All the corpses mostly belong to teenage girls, and some to middle-aged women. The bodies were placed inside black garbage bags, so it's hard to tell if someone is dumping garbage or a dead body. The police has been working tirelessly and endlessly to solve the case, and put an end to the terror brought by the serial killer, who has been given the alias, the Butcher, because all the bodies found were butchered like meat. The head, arms, legs, thighs and even fingers were chopped off. It's always a gruesome and sickening sight to see the chopped body parts of the victims. The officers who retrieve the bodies usually puke and become nauseous. They can't help but feel sorry for the victims and their families, and immense disgust and ridicule to the butcher. The local government has already offered a handsome reward to anyone who could give a reliable tip, leading to the arrest of the killer. One stormy evening, Emily kept on calling the nanny to check on her daughter. She is stuck in the convenience store because of the ravaging storm. Her manager told her to close the store, since no one would dare go out in that inclement weather. The local government has already issued a severe thunderstorm warning throughout the town. Emily closed all the lights and locked all the doors from the inside. She decided to stay for a while and wait for the storm to pacify a little, because if not, she will be dragged by the ferocious wind and rain. She was watching the thunderous sky, when she noticed a mid-sized pickup driving towards the back of the store. She was surprised to see someone out. She thought it was insanely brave to travel under the heavy downpour. But Emily wondered what business would someone have at the back of the store, at this time, and in this type of weather, because only the garbage dumpster is located there. Her heart leapt for a moment and recalled the news about the serial killer. She became nervous and frightened. She walked slowly towards the back door and peeked through the glass window. Though the rain and wind are obscuring her sight, she can still see what's happening. A bulky and tall man in a long raincoat, is dumping big garbage bags in the dumpster. The man is struggling because of the heavy rain and slippery ground. Then Emily became more terrified when she saw a pile of garbage bags at the back of the pickup. She hurriedly called 911 and described what was happening. A few moments later, sirens came wailing outside the store. The police officers didn't mind the surge of the wind and rain, because all they wanted is to stop the horror of the butcher. The man panicked and immediately hopped in the pickup truck, leaving the garbage bags under the drastic rain. But the police managed to block his path. Some of the officers inspected the garbage bags and sure enough, chopped body parts are inside. Emily went out of the store to see closely what's happening. Then one of the chopped heads rolled in front of her. She was startled. She looked down and saw the eyes of a girl, looking at her. She screamed and ran back at the store. She can't imagine what the girls have been through under the knives of the mad killer. At long last, the butcher's reign of terror has finally come to an end, and it's all thanks to Emily. The following day, she was all over the local news and was given the reward money. The killer was interviewed, but all he did was laugh maniacally, as if he lost his mind. Emily was ecstatic and overjoyed, not only because the killer has been subdued, but also she does not have to worry about her daughter's needs for the meantime. The town has finally regained the peaceful nights, which were once stolen by the killer. But little did Emily and the town knew the real story behind the killer's insane laughter. The butcher is a two-man team. The man arrested by the police that night only transports and dumps the bodies in random garbage dumpsters. The storm was a perfect opportunity to throw the bodies. It just so happened that Emily was still inside the store, waiting for the rain to calm. When the supposed-to-be killer is being captured, the true butcher was in their hideout, butchering yet another victim. When he learned of his partner's arrest through the news, he was enraged and vowed to avenge him. With gritted teeth, he sharpened his butcher knives. He was able to locate Emily's address through the news and social media. And right now, he is waiting eagerly and silently for Emily and her daughter to arrive at their apartment. He is continuously sharpening his knives behind the door, ready to chop any part of Emily's body that enters first. And Emily will be all over the local news, once again. Gary works as an embalmer. These past few months, dead bodies have been in and out of their mortuary. The number of deaths in their city is increasing at an alarming rate since the pandemic. With his workload, he is always unable to visit his mother, who is at a nursing facility, located several miles away from his employment. He likes his job. He finds it easier to work with dead people instead of the living. The only time he detested it was when his father died, because he was the one who embalmed him. Since Gary has not been able to visit his mom regularly, she always calls him because he is terribly missed. One busy day, he was focused in draining blood from a cadaver when his phone started ringing. It was her mother. He ignored the call because he has his hands full. He then received several message notifications on his phone. He got irritated, so he turned it off, and went back to work. Then suddenly, the coroner attendant rushed inside the embalming room, with a new cadaver, still inside a body bag. Gary sighed. His hands are beginning to get tired from embalming bodies continuously since yesterday. After the attendant left, he resumed working. He finished embalming one corpse, when he decided to take a quick break. He checked his phone and found missed calls and messages from his mother. He opened the messages and most of them read, "I miss you, son. If you are busy with work, I'll just drop by soon." Feeling guilty, he called his mother to comfort her and explain his situation. But the weird thing is, he started hearing a ringing sound inside the embalming room, when he began calling her mother. He searched where the ringing is coming from. He felt extreme nervousness when he realized that the ringing is coming from the body bag the coroner attendant brought in earlier. He slowly opened the bag with his trembling hands. He peeked inside and was shocked. He was immediately frozen, his eyes and mouth wide open. Inside the bag is the lifeless body of his mother, holding her cell phone, which is still ringing. Lucas refused to come to work, even if he just started his employment as a mortician assistant. He was frightened and scared because of what happened. Yesterday, he was instructed by the embalmer to put embalming solution to the corpse. He was heavily absorbed in doing his task, when he heard someone knocking. He thought that it was the embalmer who forgot his keys, but no one was there when he opened the door. He thought it was strange. He continued working, but he heard the knocks again, but this time, they were louder. Lucas began feeling shivers because the knockings are coming from inside the embalming room. He just thought that there is something leaking or something got loose. He searched where the knocks are coming from, and to his horror, it was from one of the cold lockers or morgue cabinet. The knocks grew louder and louder, then he heard someone shouted, "Why is it dark in here? Let me out!" So upon having experienced such incident, he refused to return to work. The funeral director and the embalmer assured him, that will never happen again, because he will never be left alone. Also, he can wear earphones to listen to music. Lucas finally agreed. The thought of being in an embalming room gives him goosebumps. When he returned, he put on his earphones and listened to his playlist. They were removing the brain when he heard static coming from his earphones. He checked the Bluetooth connection and it was fine. Then all of a sudden, he heard someone say faintly from his earphones, "Stop it hurts." Lucas was startled and threw his earphones on the floor. He sprinted out of the embalming room, and was never seen again. My sister has always wanted to have a mini refrigerator inside her room, so she found herself searching for affordable ones in Facebook Marketplace. She was browsing through the page when her eyes caught something extremely irresistible. A certain seller is giving away a used, but free mini refrigerator. She sent a message to the seller immediately to set an appointment. And she'll be picking it up at the seller's house tomorrow. The following day, she asked me to help her since she can't carry the refrigerator by herself, to which I annoyingly obliged. We went to the seller's house and it was quite a long ride. We thought that we were lost because our GPS led us into a forest. But finally, we reached our destination. The house was in the middle of all the enormous trees. My sister knocked on the wooden door, and we were welcomed by a tall man in an apron full of blood. I stepped back and hid behind my sister. The man saw me and laughed. He said that he usually gets the same reaction from visitors, when he is butchering his pigs at the back of his house. He invited us to come in and sit in the living room. He told us to wait for a moment. When we were left alone, I was looking around the house. It has an eerie and strange vibe. I was scanning the place when I saw a little boy staring at me. He was peeking from behind the door of a room near the dining area. He looked pale and worrisome. I waved to say hi but he hid. I got curious, so I stood up from my sit and went to the room where I saw the boy. When I entered, he was not there, but I saw something bizarre. I saw the picture of the boy hanging on the wall but he was headless. There were also several headless portraits hanging. I gasped and screamed. My sister and the seller ran towards me. My sister apologized for my intrusion. He said that there's nothing to worry about. Seeing my reaction, he said that photography is one of his hobbies. He's into weird and bizarre subjects, and uses a software to make his headless portraits. Well, he's doing a great job, because the portraits were very realistic, I thought. My sister said that we'll be on our way. The owner asked us to stay for a while because he has prepared food, to which my sister respectfully declined. When we were leaving, I looked back and saw the man staring at us, and I'm still wondering where the little boy is. The mini refrigerator was working perfectly until the next morning. It's not cooling anymore. We have checked the power and the temperature settings, and they were all good. Also, it started producing a clacking sound. She tried to message the owner but the account has been deactivated. She found it strange. She didn't give it much thought since it's free. She just decided to replug it and leave it for a while, hoping that that will do the trick. My sister went to hang out with her friends that night. I was passing by her room when I heard a clacking noise. Being a curious and nosy kid as I am, I entered her room. It was chilling inside. Then I saw the ref open. There was cold air was coming from the refrigerator. It seems to be working now. Then, I heard the same clacking sound again. It's coming from the inside the ref. I slowly peeked inside and to my shock, I saw a head. There were boil-like things covering the rotten face. It looks awfully familiar. It's the little boy I saw at the seller's place. His head appears to have been decapitated. I was terrified. Then I suddenly remembered that the boy has a headless portrait at the seller's house. What's more alarming is that there are dozens of headless pictures hanging on that wall. It occurred to me that the man who gave the free refrigerator decapitates people, and put their heads on the mini refrigerator to let it cool, then afterwards, take their pictures. I also remembered that I did not hear any pigs being butchered when we came to his place. I believe he was decapitating people. I slammed the ref and ran to my parents' room. I explained the whole thing while stuttering. At first, they were doubtful because I have a wild imagination. But my father finally gave in to my request. I gave him the location through our last destination in GPS, and he called 911. Several police officers went to the man's place, but it has already been abandoned. They saw decapitated bodies at different stages of decomposition, piled behind the house. Their heads are nowhere to be found. There's a deep pit beside the bodies. They didn't find the headless portraits on the wall, but they found something odd. There were at least a dozen mini refrigerators beside the headless bodies. Then I fearfully realized that my sister and I could have been victims of that gruesome act. Emily works as a tour guide in one of America's most haunted houses, the Lizzie Borden house, located in Falls River, Massachusetts. On August 4, 1892, Andrew and Abby Borden were found hacked to death with the use of a hatchet or an axe. Andrew was discovered in a pool of blood on the living room couch, his face nearly split in two. Abby was upstairs, her head smashed to pieces. Lizzie Borden, one of the daughters of Andrew, was the main suspect, but has been found innocent due to lack of evidence. Today, the Lizzie Borden house has been developed into a bed and breakfast inn, and museum. They also offer a house tour, a ghost tour and a ghost hunt. Emily is one of the best tour guides in the celebrated murder house. It's always gratifying and amusing to see guests creeping out and being scared, as they go to the spots where Andrew and Abby were brutally murdered. Some of the guests confirm that they felt ghostly presence, or heard slamming doors and footsteps, or even heard the laugh of Lizzie Borden. Emily found those testimonies beyond belief. Because for her, those are just figments of their wild imaginations. It's almost certain that being inside and walking on the halls of a murder house bring chills and fright. But for Emily, who has not felt or seen any ghostly presence her entire life, all those stories are just fabricated. Emily spearheaded the ghost tour that day. It's a 90-minute tour that takes place from 7:30 to 9 o'clock in the evening. It includes a visit to the first floor of the Lizzie Borden house, where Andrew Borden was murdered, and a tour out in town to the other haunted locations nearby. Emily and her group was halfway in the tour. They decided to rest for a while outside the Borden house, to feel the night breeze the evening has to offer. Emily was chatting with a guest, when she noticed something moving from the window on the second floor. If she's not mistaken, that's the room where Abby was murdered. Her heart leapt for a bit, but she convinced herself that it was just the shadow, casted by the lit candle in the room. Then after a minute, she noticed a shadow prowling on the walls. She got frightened. She's starting to believe the existence of something paranormal. Emily mustered some courage and informed the group that they will continue with the tour. It was almost 9 in the evening, when the group returned to the murder house. The guests went to their respective rooms on the second floor, while Emily stayed on the first floor, and rested on the couch where Andrew was murdered. She was looking around when she noticed the handleless axe, beside the replica of the smashed skulls of the victims, missing. She panicked. Though it is just a copy, it has a high monetary value, and most importantly, it is a crucial item of the Lizzie Borden murder house. Without it, the essence of the murders will be incomplete. It would be impossible for someone to take it, because everyone was on the tour earlier. She had goosebumps. Currently, she is considering the possibility that the ghost of Lizzie Borden, or Andrew or Abby, is hiding the axe. She was in the middle of a deep, bewildered and horrified thinking, when she heard a door slammed on the second floor. Followed by a scream, asking for help from one of the guests. She hurriedly ran upstairs. The shout for help came from the room where Abby was murdered. She pushed the door as hard as possible. She gasped at what she saw. A guest was lying on the floor, bleeding, and on top of her is a rugged-looking man holding the handleless axe. The man is about to chop the guest, when Emily immediately kicked him with all her might. The man lost his balance then fell on the floor. She managed to grab the axe from the man's hand. She immediately called for help using her phone. The rest of the guests was awoken by the noise and helped in subduing the intruder. Emily connected all that happened that night. There was no ghost. The shadow she saw earlier and the axe missing was all the man's doing. The police came and arrested the culprit, while the guest that was attacked was taken to a nearby hospital. When the sun came up, Emily went to the hospital to visit the guest. The guest was thankful for Emily saving her. Emily said that if not for the door slamming and the cry for help, she would not be able to rescue her. The guest got confused. She said that she did not slam the door because she was on the bed bleeding. Also, she did not scream for help because the man was covering her mouth the whole time. Emily felt chills all of a sudden. At that time, the thought of a ghostly presence is slowly sinking on her. Timothy's father got laid off because of the pandemic. His dad filed for unemployment, but the medical bills are soaring high. There are available options to get health insurance, but you have to pay a premium price, and that is not an option for them. So Timothy decided to be an Uber driver as a part-time job to make ends meet. It was almost 10 o'clock in the evening, and Timothy is dropping off his last passenger. He was overly exhausted, because he had a straight 16-hour shift that day, including his permanent job. He was about to go home, when he suddenly got a notification on his Uber app. He checked the pickup point, and it was just a few blocks from his current location. He quickly looked at the profile of the rider, and everything seems legit. He didn't find any red flags. It will be just a 15-minute ride, so accepting it wouldn't be much of a hassle to him. He went to the pickup point, and it looked like an abandoned apartment. He got puzzled because there were two guys, who appears to be in their mid-20s waiting for him, instead of a girl who made the request earlier. He just thought that the girl made the request for them, so he just shrugged off any suspicions that he has. The two guys are wearing face masks as required by the law. Since it's pandemic, all passengers must sit on the back seat, but one of the guys insisted on sitting at the passenger seat. Timothy didn't argue, he just wanted to get on with the trip and go home. At the start of their ride, Timothy attempted to have a small talk, but the two guys just kept making grunt replies, so he did not bother to continue. He also noticed that both guys are busy texting on their phones. He didn't mind them and just focused driving. They were passing a dark street, when the guy in the passenger seat told him to pull over, because he needs to take a quick leak on one of the street light posts. Timothy refused, saying that it might be dangerous because of the location. He also said that they will be in their destination in no time. All of a sudden, Timothy felt something sharp and cold pointed at his nape. It's the guy in the back seat. Timothy panicked. He began trembling and sweating. The guy beside him said, in a high-pitched voice, to stop the car immediately. Feeling helpless, Timothy pulled over slowly at the side. He was shaking, fearing for his life. The guy in the back seat, still holding the knife, told him to get out of the car. Timothy was frozen for a minute. His fear is spiking. His heart is beating fast and his mind is extremely confused. He was still in that predicament when he realized one of the guys kicking him, forcing him to get out. Then he felt an intense tingle, like a severe electric shock. Followed by an unbearable heat, nothing he has ever imagined. Then he felt something warm flowing from his nape, down to his back. He touched it. It's blood! He was screaming and crying. The guys managed to push him out of the car. He fell hard on the rocky ground, his blood dripping. He covered the cut with his hands, trying to bear the immense pain. The guys went off speeding with his car. He can clearly hear their laughter echoing on the silent cold night. He desperately shouted for help, but with the stillness of the night, no one came to his aid. He helplessly curled his wounded body on the ground, then slowly, lost his consciousness, while feeling powerless and feeble. Timothy woke up on a hospital bed. He saw his parents and young siblings around him, looking immensely worried. A concerned citizen, who called 911, found him laying unconsciously on the street, drenched in his blood. The police did a preliminary investigation, and found out that the guys are notorious carjackers in the area. He also learned that the Uber account used to request the ride was hacked. Timothy sobbed. He and his family are just thankful that he still has his life to keep. And as for the Uber ride gig, that is way past behind him now. Leo is on cloud 9 because his latest TikTok video went viral again. Currently, it has 20 million views, but keeps on increasing every second. He just came out of high school, and is contemplating whether or not to pursue college. But between paying off student loans for years in the future, and earning money just by doing videos on TikTok, Leo knows the better option. At first, he had a hard time thinking of his content. But being a natural bully and joker, he tried prank videos. On his initial videos, his brother and mother were his victims. The videos gained a lot of views immediately. It was a major success. And just right after his second upload, he has started earning money. He had several bashers, but he didn't mind them. As long as he's earning, who cares about them? But after several videos, he noticed that the views were constantly decreasing. Either his bashers are increasing, or his followers are getting bored of his pranks at home. Leo decided to up his game by going out to public places, and pranking random people. He was not mistaken. He regained his momentum and started getting more views than ever, which means more earnings for him. For some people, it's fine to be pranked publicly. At least they get to be TikTok famous for seconds, and will start gaining followers of their own if they have respective TikTok accounts. But there were instances when some people get pissed off and irritated. Of course, no one would like one's privacy be invaded, or much worse, be embarrassed and humiliated in front of millions of people. Even after Leo explained that it's just for fun and content, some people wouldn't simply let it pass. He was punched and kicked on several occasions. But despite having received a number of physical blows, he still continued doing pranks in public places, because ever since he started uploading public pranks, his earnings doubled. But the prank video that he uploaded recently, might probably be his last, just might. It was in a public park. Leo acted like a psycho killer while holding a driller. He approached the people seated on the bench, trying to scare them with his stare and driller. Once he got to his brother, who was his accomplice, he suddenly grabbed him and drilled his chest. Fake blood gushed out of his chest. The couple seated right next to him stood up in shock, while a woman with a baby carriage who was passing by, continued walking but looked intently at the scene. The other people too can't help but stare at what's happening. His brother left and went to the car, where Leo and their friend were waiting. They laughed so hard after reviewing the video. But they were interrupted when suddenly, an angry man came rushing towards them. He said that his wife is having a heart attack, and is being helped now by concerned people in the park, until the ambulance they called arrives. Leo was lost for words. His face turned pale. He apologized, explaining that it's just a prank and it's for TikTok. His brother and friend backed him up, trying to defend their actions. But the man was too furious to listen to their speeches. He grabbed the drill from Leo, and in an instant, drilled his brother for real. Leo and his friend screamed and tried to stop the man to no avail. After his brother was soaked with his own real blood, the man threw the drill back to Leo, still fuming with anger. He was petrified. His friend immediately snapped out of his shock and drove off to a nearby hospital. Leo was holding his brother, telling him to hang on. But as he was comforting him, he took out his phone from his pocket, opened his TikTok account, then went on live stream. Some people, never ever, really learn. Rosie and Marianne started making their TikTok videos as a duo. They want to make extra money and become TikTok stars. Both are working in a mall as retail sales associates. They are assigned in the makeup section of the store. Since there aren't a lot of customers shopping, they seize their downtime to make TikTok videos during their shift. Their content includes trying out different makeup styles and applications, giving feedback on certain makeup brands, giving tips on how to maximize and make full use of their purchases, and finally, posing or strutting like models. At first, they did the videos out of boredom and to kill time, but they didn't expect to gain thousands of followers almost instantly. Now, they not only have the perfect side hustle, their makeup sales also skyrocketed. Some shoppers recognize them, much to their delight. Some are even taking pictures with them, which made them feel like celebrities. But when people started approaching them, Rosie and Marianne became distant with each other. More people are swarming around Rosie, which made Marianne extremely jealous since she does all the technical work, like adding transitions and editing. The only contribution that Rosie has is her good looks. It can't be helped. Rosie is far more beautiful than Marianne, even without makeup and the filters on TikTok. One time, Marianne heard a fan say to Rosie that she should start her own TikTok account, because she looks like a star, and that Marianne is just dragging her down. Whenever Rosie gets this comment, she just laughs it off because for her, she and Marianne are close friends and partners. She knows that her friend is affected, so she tries to cheer her up and remind her always that they are a duo, and will become equally famous TikTok stars. But as Rosie tries to comfort her friend, Marianne's paranoia and jealousy just grew. And to add more to her frustration, she was transferred to the women's dress section, where she was assigned to pick up and fold the clothes which fell from the stands, and returned sloppily by the customers. Rosie felt sorry for Marianne, but there's nothing that she can do because it's the management's decision. From that moment, Marianne started ignoring Rosie. They were like strangers who became friends, then strangers again, but this time, with remorse. Then one day during her break, Marianne was browsing TikTok, when she saw a video of Rosie on her FYP, or For You page. She was surprised. She didn't realize that she started her own account already. Her blood boiled when she saw that her followers are 3 times larger than what they have on the first TikTok account. She was infuriated and enraged. The following day, Rosie was surprised to see a small box wrapped with ribbon on her work desk. There was a note attached to it which read, "I'm an avid fan of yours, please use this during one of your live streams." Rosie is used to getting gifts from her followers. She opened the box and saw a facial cream inside. She opened it, and was drawn into its vanilla buttery scent. Since she has 30 more minutes before the mall opens, she decided to have a TikTok live stream. Rosie said that she is going to try a brand new facial cream. She complimented the smell and also its texture. Then she slowly applied an ample amount on her face. But as she continued applying it, she started feeling a burning sensation all over her face. She thought that she might have applied too much. She grabbed a tissue paper from her handbag, and slowly and carefully removed the cream. After a few wipes, the burning sensation has subsided, as if her face has become numb. She thought that everything's under control now. But when she looked at the comments on her screen, she got confused. All her followers are asking what happened to her face, and to look at the mirror. Rosie hurriedly ran to the bathroom, with her live stream still ongoing. She was shocked, and got almost insane upon seeing her reflection on the mirror. Her face was completely burned. Skin was falling off from it. Rosie washed her face with water, but it made it even worse. She fell on her knees, crying and about to lose her mind. While Marianne, who is watching Rosie's live stream up until now under a troll account, sent a rocket, beach house and planet stickers to Rosie, while laughing manically inside a storage room, just right beside the bathroom where Rosie is crying in pain. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, and James was on his way to his dormitory. He's quite excited because he'll officially start his life as a freshman college student tomorrow. He could have arrived sooner, if not for the police putting a barricade on the street going to the university. So he looked for other passable roads just to reach the school dormitory. He was assigned at room 206, so he took the stairs to his room on the second floor. But as he is climbing it, he overheard some students going downstairs, talking about an accident earlier. They said that a student from their school died, and that the body cannot be recognized because it is completely burned. He didn't catch all the details because he's too preoccupied with the thought of lying restlessly on his dorm bed for the first time. Finally, he made it to his room with cold sweat dripping from his forehead. He searched for his keys and opened the door. He entered the room in a carefree way, and switched on the lights. He got startled and jumped back. He saw a man sitting on one of the beds. The man chuckled and apologized for spooking him. He introduced himself as Binge, his roommate. He told James that the lights are too bright for him, so he turned it off until someone comes in. James just laughed it off and got settled in. He started a conversation with Binge to get to know him better, since they will be roommates for at least one semester. They talked for an hour when James suggested to retire for the night, since it was getting late. Binge agreed but said that he'll be taking a quick shower first before getting to bed. James laid on his bed and called one of his friends, Gabby, who is a sophomore at the same university. He asked for some first aid tips, cool hangouts around the school, professors to avoid, and a lot more. They are in the middle of their chat, when Gabby asked him if he knew that a student from their university died in a car crash that afternoon, and he said yes. He told him that he overheard it from a couple of students. Gabby applauded him for being fearless because he was not even bothered by the news. James got confused and inquired further. Gabby told him that the student who died is also a freshman just like him, and on top of that, the student was supposed to be his roommate. James' jaw dropped upon learning it. He told his friend not to kid around because how can the dead student be his roommate, where in fact, he had met and talked with Binge, who is now taking a shower. Gabby told him in a serious and rather pitchy tone, that he is not joking. He said that the name of the student is Benjamin Johnson. James got goosebumps and ended the call immediately. He called Binge several times but there was no answer. He can only hear the water falling from the shower. He walked towards the bathroom door at a snail's pace, with his chest pounding. He noticed that the door is open. He called Binge for the last time, but still, no reply. He bravely entered the bathroom, step by step, his feet dragging him to the ground. The shower is still running, but Binge is nowhere to be found. He trembled in fear, and ran out of his room as fast as he could. That night, he slept at Gabby's dorm room because of fright. And when morning came, he asked one of the residence hall directors to be transferred into a different room. A different room other than room 206, which he dared not to enter, anymore.